Daf Yomi, Tractate Zevachim, page 49b, top of the page. It was talking about, the last line was, the previous Amud was the Gemara comments. This works out well if we hold that with regard to a matter that is left its category to teach a new matter, the following principle applies. That matter itself does not learn halachot from its general category until the Torah explicitly returns it to that category. Now on the top of 49b. Ava klalu gamar mine letzafun shapir ela is severe lan de la hu gamar michlalo velo klalo gamar mine hai gufe isrich. But other matters in its general category learn halachot from it. In this case, with regard to the halacha of slaughtering a guilt offering in the north, it is well, although some of the halachot of the guilt offering of a leper do not apply to the category of guilt offerings in general, it can still serve as the source for the halacha that any guilt offering is disqualified if slaughtered not in the north. But if we hold that in the case of a matter that has left its category to teach a new matter, it, meaning the original matter, does not learn the halachot from its general category, and its general category does not learn halachot from it, then this verse is necessary to teach its own halacha. Kevan de ahadre ahadre. The Gemara answers, once the verse returned the halacha of the guilt offering of a leper to the general category by stating as the sin offering, so is the guilt offering, and return it completely. Therefore, when the verse states that it requires slaughter in the north of the temple courtyard, the phrase is not needed to teach the halacha about the guilt offering of a leper, and it can be used to teach the halacha about guilt offerings in general. Amar lei marzutra bereder amar lavina ema ki hadrika legabe matan dame veimorin de boy kahuna avoshchita de lo boy kahuna lo mi boy tzafon. A little fly around here. Marzutra, son of Mari, says Ravina, say that when the verse returned the guilt offering of a leper to the class of standard guilt offerings, that is only with regard to placement of blood on the altar and burning of the sacrificial portions which require priesthood, meaning only a priest may perform those rites, as the verse states, for the sin offering, so is the guilt offering to the priest, Leviticus 14:13. But say that slaughter which does not require priesthood, as even not a non-priest may slaughter an offering, does not require that it be done in the north of the temple courtyard. Imkain, nemakra, ki kechatas hu, mai kechatas hasham, keshar hashavot yeh. Ravina answered him, if so, let the verse state, for as the sin offering, so is it. What is added by the expanded phrase, for as the sin offering, so is the guilt offering? It teaches that the guilt offering of a leper will be like the rest of the guilt offerings. Lama li lakshoy lachatos, lama li lakshoy loilo. The Gemara asks, why do I need to juxtapose the guilt offering of a leper to a sin offering to teach the halacha that it must be slaughtered in the north? And why do I need to juxtapose to a burnt offering to teach the same halacha? The verse states, and he shall slaughter the sheep in the place where they slaughter the sin offering, and the burnt offering in the place of the sanctuary. Leviticus 14:13. Amar Ravino itzterich I akashi lechatos velo akashi loilo Avimina chatos meichel lamdab me'oilo. Davar lamin behekish, choser lamin behekish. Ravina said it was necessary to juxtapose the guilt offering to both of them, as if the verse had juxtaposed it only to a sin offering, but had not juxtaposed it to a burnt offering. I would say, from where is the requirement to slaughter a sin offering in the north derived? Is from the halach of the burnt offering, as explained on 48a. I would then assume that a matter derived via a juxtaposition, meaning the halach of a sin offering, which was derived via a juxtaposition to the halach of a burnt offering, then teaches that halacha to another case via juxtaposition. But there is a principle that with regard to matters of consecration, the halacha may not be derived via a juxtaposition from another halacha that was itself derived via a juxtaposition. To prevent this incorrect assumption, the verse had to specifically teach the juxtaposition to a burnt offering. Amar le marzutra bered Rav Mari Lavina v'nikshe la'oilo v'lo nikshe l'chatos. Marzutra, son of Rav Mari, said to Ravina, but let the verse juxtapose the guilt offering of a leper only to a burnt offering and not juxtapose it to a sin offering. The juxtaposition to a sin offering appears superfluous. Havimina davar lamin behekish. Choyzum lo behekish v'chitema nikshe akosh lechatos nikshe nichale lemakish le l'ikar v'lo nikesh le l'tafel lach yakashi lechatos yakashi lo'ila l'meimar davar halamin behekish she'eno chozer u'milamed behekish. Ravina answered, if that had been so, I would still say that a matter derived via a juxtaposition then teaches its halacha via a juxtaposition. And if you would say that if it were to be so, let the verse juxtapose the guilt offering of a leper only to a sin offering, one could answer, that is preferable for the Torah that it juxtaposes the guilt offering to the primary offering, about which it states that it must be slaughtered in the north, meaning the burnt offering, and not juxtaposed to the secondary offering for the sin offering for this reason, meaning to prevent the incorrect assumption that a matter derived via juxtaposition and teaches its halacha via a juxtaposition. The verse juxtaposed it to a sin offering and also juxtaposed it to a burnt offering, to say that a matter derived via juxtaposition does not then teach its halacha via a juxtaposition. Rav Amar minhacha d'chsiv kasher yuram yishor zevach hashlamim l'may hilchasa yoser sekav yishtei kloyos beguf d'chsiv. Rava says the principle that a matter derived via a juxtaposition cannot then teach its halacha via a juxtaposition is derived from here, as it is written with regard to the sin offering brought by the high priest, and the two kidneys and the fat that is upon them, which is by the loins, and the diaphragm with the liver, which he shall take away by the kidneys, as it is taken off from the ox of the sacrifice of peace offerings, and the priest shall make them smoke upon the altar of burnt offering. Leviticus 4, 9-10. One can ask, for what halacha is this offering juxtaposed to that of a peace offering? If it is to teach that the priest must sacrifice the diaphragm with the liver and the two kidneys from the offering that is written with regard to the offering itself in the previous verse. This does not need to be derived via a juxtaposition. Mishum devoy agmori yoser esakavish de kloyos mi par hedem davo shod zibu l'siyah v'yizore beguf eluksiv mi par kohen Mashiach hu digabar. It is written due to the fact that the verse wants to teach the halacha of the diaphragm with the liver and the two kidneys, deriving it from the halach of the offering of the bull for an unwitting communal sins, and teaching it to apply to the halacha of the goat brought as sin offerings for communal idol worship. It is not written explicitly in the passage discussing the bull for an unwitting communal sin itself, and it is derived from the halacha of the bull for an unwitting sin of an anointed priest, meaning the high priest. The offering for an unwitting communal sin is juxtaposed to the sin offering brought by the high priest in the verse, so shall he do with the bull, as he did with the bull of the sin offering. So shall he do with this. Leviticus 4:20. Lahayas Rikash Yuram. Then you have the command. You see, go fail of it. Heavy Davar Hanlam Hekish Choser and Hekish. For this reason, it was necessary for the verse to state, as it is taken off from the ox, Leviticus 4:10, so that it is as though it wrote explicitly in the passage discussing the bull for an unwitting communal sin itself. One of the hermeneutical principles applied to understanding the verses in the Torah is, if the halacha stated is not required for the matter in which it is written, apply it to another matter. When this principle is employed, the halacha written in one context is viewed as if it were written elsewhere. In this case, as it were not necessary for the verse to write the juxtaposition to a peace offering in the context of the sin offering brought by the high priest, it is applied to the case of the bull for an unwitting communal sin, and therefore it will not be a case of a matter derived via a juxtaposition that then teaches its halacha via a juxtaposition. Amar le'er papa. Wow. Amar le'er papa l'rava v'lichtevei Begufe v'lo nikesh. When Papa says to Rava, why not let the Torah write explicitly in the passage discussing the bull for an unwitting communal sin itself, as a diaphragm with the liver and two kidneys must be removed from the ox, and not juxtapose it to a peace offering in this convoluted manner. Ikas begufe v'lo ekesh habimina davar halamed behekesh chozer malam behekesh v'chitema. Nikshiakoshi Nichale Deches Ve Begufe Dimaakish Le Akoshi Hachi Kasvi Akashi Memra Davar Halamed Behekish Ein Choser Amlamed Behekish. Rava answered, if the Torah had written in that passage itself and not juxtaposed it, I would say that in general a matter derived via juxtaposition then teaches via juxtaposition, as one would not have this instance to serve as a counterexample to that principle. And if you would say, if so, why not simply juxtapose the case of the bull for an unwitting communal sin to the case of the bull of a anointed priest? I would answer, it is preferable for the verse that it writes it in the passage itself rather than to juxtapose it alone. It is for this reason that it wrote it and juxtaposed it, to say that a matter derived via a juxtaposition cannot then teach its halacha via a juxtaposition. Juxtaposition has an English numerical logic value of 193. Juxtaposed. Okay. 193, and what else? Juxtaposition juxtaposed. 135, juxtaposed. Yeah. Definitely. 1 second here. Okay. It is for this reason that I wrote it and juxtaposed it to say that a matter derived via a juxtaposition cannot then teach its halacha via a juxtaposition. Okay. Hekesh. 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 It's a simon. Gezerah shava kal v'chol mel simon. Before beginning a lengthy discussion concerning derivations via compounded methodologies of the hermeneutical principles, the Gemara presents a mnemonic for its forthcoming discussion: juxtaposition, verbal analogy, and a fortiori inference. Davar alamed behakish ein chozer ulamed behakish. The principle that a matter derived via juxtaposition cannot then teach its halacha via juxtaposition is indicated either from the proof of Rava or from the proof of Ravina, both cited earlier. The one asks, what is the halacha with regard to whether a matter derived via juxtaposition can then teach its halacha to another matter via a verbal analogy? Tashema, Rabbi Nassan ben Aftur Mus Omer, Minayin lepricha v'gadim shehi tahira, ne'emar karachas v'gabachas v'gadim, ne'emar karachas v'gabachas v'adam. The Gemara suggests coming here a proof from a Braita. Rabbi Natan ben Avtomos says, from where is it derived that if leprosy of garments spreads throughout an entire garment, that it is pure? It is derived via a verbal analogy. A bareness within and a bareness without are stated with regard to leprosy of garments. And the priest shall look after that the mark is washed. Behold, if the mark has not changed its color, and the mark has not spread, it is impure. You shall burn it in the fire. It is a fret, whether the bareness be within or without. Leviticus 13:55, and a bald head, karachat, and a bald forehead, gabachat, are stated with regard to leprosy of a person. But if it be in the bald head or the bald forehead, a reddish white plague, it is leprosy breaking out in his bald head or his bald forehead. Leviticus 13:42. Just as there with regard to a person if leprosy spread throughout him, entirely he is pure. As the verse states, then the priest shall look. And behold, if the leprosy has covered all of his flesh, he shall pronounce the one who has the mark pure. It is all turned white. He is pure. Leviticus 13:13. So too here with regard to garments, if the leprosy spread throughout the entire garment, it is pure. Yehoshua minal nechsiv mirosho yad ragav itakash rosho l'regel malehal kulo apach lavon brach b'chulo tor afkam kulo apach lavan brach b'chulo tor. The Gemara continues its proof, but there with regard to the head, which serves as the source for this verbal analogy, from where do we derive that if leprosy spreads throughout the head, he is pure? As is written, and if the leprosy breaks out on the skin, and leprosy covers all the skin of the one who has the mark, from his head to his feet, as far as it appears to the priest. Leviticus 13:12, and the verse thereby juxtaposes leprosy on his head to leprosy on his foot, teaching the following halacha. Just as there with regard to leprosy of the body and foot, if its entirety turned white and spread all over him, he is pure. So here, in the case of leprosy of the head, if its entirety turned white and spread over all his head, he is pure. Evidently, a matter derived via juxtaposition can then teach its halacha to another matter via a verbal analogy. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Yechol HaTorah kula lemedin lamad milamed, chutz mikadshim she'ein darin lamad milamed. Rabbi Yochanan says this cannot serve as a proof with regard to the halacha of consecrated matters. With regard to the entire Torah, one derives the halacha derived via verbal analogy from the halacha derived via juxtaposition, apart from with regard to consecrated matters, to kachim, where one does not derive the halacha derived via verbal analogy from halacha derived via juxtaposition. Dim kain, yamer tzefon b'ashim b'teisim b'gzeh shava tikachi kadashim b'chatas. Rabbi Yochanan explains as if it were to be so, that one could derive a halacha in this manner, even concerning consecrated matters. The verse should not state the requirement for slaughter in the north with regard to guilt offering, as stated from the explicit juxtaposition of a burnt offering and a sin offering. Instead, derive it through a verbal analogy. The verse describes a guilt offering as an offering of the most sacred order. See Leviticus 7:1. And its halacha can be derived via a verbal analogy from that of a sin offering, which is described in the same manner. See Leviticus 6:18. Lav lememra. Rabbi Yochanan continues, is this not to say, at least with regard to consecrated matters, that matter derived via juxtaposition cannot then teach its halacha to another matter via verbal analogy? The Gemara rejects Rabbi Yochanan's proof, but perhaps the requirement to slaughter a guilt offering in the north must be written explicitly, because the verbal analogy can be refuted as follows. What is notable about a sin offering is notable in that it atones for those sins liable for punishment by karet, which is not so with regard to a guilt offering. The Gemara rejects this claim. There are additional descriptions of guilt offering and a sin offering as offerings of the most sacred order written in the verses, "This shall be yours in the most sacred items, reserved for the fire." Reserved from the fire, every offering of theirs, every meal offering of theirs, every sin offering of theirs, and every guilt offering of theirs which they may offer to me shall be most holy for you and for your sons. Numbers 18, verse 9. The verbal analogy derived from extra phrases in the verse cannot be refuted with theological claim. Therefore, Rabbi Yochanan's claim stands, and at least with regard to consecrated matters, a matter derived via a juxtaposition cannot then teach its halacha to another matter via a verbal analogy. Davar halamen hekesh choser the Gemara states that a matter derived via juxtaposition then teaches its halacha via a kal v'chomer inference.